Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed.
Countless spirits are said to haunt the wilds of the world. A great number of them are said to be harbingers of doom, and a staggering amount of them sport a pair of antlers. Among the most mysterious and downright chilling of them was known as Herne the Hunter. A ghostly figure with an intimidating aura about him, Herne the Hunter was said to roam the grounds of Windsor Forest in Berkshire, England, namely during the autumn and winter months, riding a magnificent black horse and wearing a tattered black cape. In the midnight hour, his antlered form would cast an eerie silhouette in the moonlight as he galloped through the open trails of the woods, sometimes accompanied by hunting dogs or an owl, before returning to his sacred place, an ancient tree referred to as Herne's Oak. Herne the Hunter is a truly mysterious figure. Some claim him to be a violent protector of the forest and its creatures, while others claim he's an omen of misfortune to those who happen upon him. So the question is, just who is Herne the Hunter? Interestingly, the earliest mention of the name Herne the Hunter comes from the works of William Shakespeare, in his play The Merry Wives of Windsor. In this story, the character Falstaff is convinced to dress as the ghoulish entity as part of a prank to humiliate the man in retribution for his behavior. It is stated that Herne was once a groundskeeper of the king, who in death became an antlered ghost that haunts the great oak, rattles chains in the dead of night, steals and kills cattle, and makes cows and goats produce blood in place of milk. Shakespeare treated Herne the Hunter as something of a local paranormal legend of Windsor Forest. But many mythologists and folklorists have hypothesized that Herne the Hunter was more than just a creation of an English playwright, and could have been inspired by already existing mythology, and perhaps could have been a pagan god long forgotten. From a visual standpoint, Herne is closest to the Celtic ghoulish figure Cernunnos. Like Herne, Cernunnos is an enigmatic being resembling a strong human man with a large pair of stag antlers sprouting from his head, surrounded by forest animals, and forever tied to the wild places of the world and the creatures that dwell within them. Though Cernunnos has developed a strong, distinct following through modern pagan practices, what was known of this figure is just as big a mystery as Herne the Hunter, if not more so, as there are no surviving Celtic texts of his stories or his worship, merely vivid imagery of a horned or antlered man stoically living among animals. Herne the Hunter could, in theory, have been a variant of Cernunnos and other horned deities. But Cernunnos was never depicted as being a hunter of any kind, nor riding a horse, carrying weapons, or harming people or their livestock, elements practically synonymous with Herne's legend. Another potential idea for Herne's origin, or at least certain elements of his legend, is the motif of the wild hunt. Called a host of different regional names all across Europe, the wild hunt was a vast gathering of spectral beings on horseback that galloped hard across the wilds in the dead of night, accompanied by baying hounds as they pursue their quarry. The identities of the hunters vary from story to story, as does the purpose of the wild hunt. Some claim it was for divine justice, retribution, to act as a warning, to declare a grand change, to gather the souls of the damned or evil beings, or simply just to exist. And mortals who were unlucky enough to see the procession of ghostly hunters were at risk of being swept away and carried off by the wild hunt, to the other world, to the afterlife, or to become one of them for all eternity. Herne's legend may have been inspired by tales of the Wild Hunt, a spectral hunter in pagan attire who rides a horse hard through the wilds and brings about misfortune wherever he goes, seems to fit the criteria. In fact, in some later iterations of the story, Herne was said to be the leader of the Wild Hunt. But what if Herne the Hunter was a real-life person? One who, after his passing, became mythologized as a vengeful spirit with stag antlers. After the release of Merry Wives of Windsor, a number of accounts sprang up of the alleged identity and backstory of a man who would go on to become Herne the Hunter. In 1792, English author, engraver, and Shakespeare enthusiast Samuel Ireland claimed that Herne the Hunter was once a groundskeeper who had committed some great offense, causing him to lose his position and fall into disgrace. And so he hanged himself on the oak tree, and his spirit forever haunts the forest. Some say that he was once a yeoman called Richard Horne, who was found guilty of poaching deer in the forest belonging to King Henry VIII, which so happens to be the very forest that Herne forever haunts. Yet another story claims that Herne had killed a white stag in the forest, an animal that was revered and considered notably sacred to the abbess of nearby Bordesley Abbey. The abbess cursed the hunter, and he was condemned to hunt forever within the forest, forever bearing the antlers of the stag he killed, and carrying a chain with him, said to be from the abbey where the abbess had intended to keep the stag as a holy pet. Of all the many ghosts of England, few were as visually striking or potentially dangerous to mortals as Herne the Hunter. A grim and foreboding figure atop a stallion, with stag antlers atop his head, and penchant for bringing misery and death to those who stray into his forest after dark, that has been immortalized in the works of William Shakespeare and folklore surrounding Windsor Forest. So just who was Herne the Hunter? Was he some ancient god, long buried by Christianity and forgotten to time? Was he Cernunnos, given a new name? A member of the Wild Hunt, given a point of distinction? A real-life figure who became mythologized as a ghost through folklore and tall tales? We may never know the truth. Regardless, if you happen to pass through Windsor Forest in England, mind the oak trees, and be clear before nightfall.
There is an old tale goes that Herne the Hunter, sometime a keeper here in Windsor Forest, doth all the winter time at still midnight walk round about an oak with great ragged horns, and there he blasts the tree and takes the cattle, and makes milch kine yield blood, and shakes a chain in a most hideous and dreadful manner. You have heard of such a spirit, and well you know, the superstitious idle-headed eld received and did deliver to our age this tale of Herne the Hunter. For truth,